Hi guys, it's Laura. I was going to start video 2 today for sketching designs to go with the flares that we draped yesterday. So funny, whenever I'm teaching about developing concepts and ideas, something that comes up all the time is how, like, let's say you have a random bag of swatches and photos and inspirations. Now, we can do this stuff digitally, but my favorite way, if I really think about it, my favorite way to bring together new concepts is physical. So to have, but it works digitally as well. Images, fabric swatches, photos, whatever, anything, everything. But have it all out like on the floor or on your desk. Desks are great, but I do have to say there is a special gift and quality to working on the floor. I also advise this in my model drawing classes to sometimes, all the time, you probably get a stiff neck, but when you work on the floor, you get into your play state. You start to feel more childlike or less restricted, less like you're at school, less restrained, less serious. So spreading out all your fabrics on the floor, getting on the floor, you could be on all fours, you could be crisscross legs, there's many ways you can approach it, but it puts you in a different frame of mind, a different part of your brain, different hemisphere of your brain, and this is powerful. This is where the opening ups often happen, in this play state, this flow state, in this more childlike and pleasure-based place where you're physical, your whole body is involved in your creative process, and not only your brain and your eyeballs. So that's a suggestion. And then, okay, so I grabbed the sketchbook to do the sketching demo, and this sketchbook had some swatches in it, and I was surprised. So there was this page that had these swatches on it. Actually, this swatch was like this. This is a stretchy and metallic fabric. This is a sheer and opaque print. Has a little bit of both. Chiffon with burnout. Then black lace, and I was layering that over this. And so this is something I put together a long time ago. And then today I was thinking, oh, maybe I want to use the other side of this so that it's more subdued. But it was all in my sketchbook. And the funny thing about that is I have this deck that I got myself for Mother's Day, and the cards really jive with that color story. Oh, which brings me back to the original message I had for you about when you put all your stuff out on the floor, all your random fabric swatches and photos and things, is that, I always say this because this is my experience, and maybe this is my personality, my design personality, but to me, it's like a magnet. Like certain fabrics, certain colors, certain textures, certain silhouettes, certain inspirations, they start to pull together. They group themselves together. And this is why I love so much engaging in fashion design. Whether you're going into corporate or whether this is something that you're just called to do for pleasure, because that pleasure and that divine, beautiful experience that you have of creating and improvising is like the foundation for your life. Enjoying your life, magic, creative fire. So when you lay things out and you start to see that, like, you're drawn to one fabric swatch, and as you pull it towards you, immediately your eye catches this, your intuition catches this other one that wants to pull together with it, and the next thing you know, you have a story. You know what I mean? And then what happened to me today was that even though I had these swatches, then this deck of cards was right next to it. And I was so happy to pull this card. I shuffled a whole bunch of times. I said, oh, I'm going to get an inspiration. I got this beautiful inspiration, which brings the fabrics to life. Like, it just all feels so meant to be. And I call that the magnet experience, where you create the space to create, and maybe you select one item. You don't know the whole story yet. You just have one feeling, but it starts to generate this pulling, attracting energy that brings all the elements together. And so I'm only part way through. Like, I have a fabric group now that I created, years ago, that was in my sketchbook. But now when I go to sketch, it's going to keep happening. And I was just thinking, that's the law of attraction, isn't it? Create the space. Focus on what you know. Don't focus on what you don't know. Focus on what you know. Focus on what you like or love, what makes you feel good, what you're drawn to. And know that it's going to act like a magnet. It's going to start pulling in. One fabric swatch is going to pull in the next and the next. And things are going to start to gather towards you. And that's such a great lesson for life. You don't have to go out seeking all the answers. If you give yourself a space and set the intention to create, things will start to come towards you, and you will recognize them because you started the journey. Okay, big law of attraction metaphor. You pick the one fabric swatch, and the next one comes. And then the person you need to talk to comes. Anything you're creating, you take that first step, and the next steps come towards you. And interesting, I had this fabric out from years ago, and now I just had a surprise that the other side told a completely different story, and I'm going to use that one. Okay, and now I want to read a card for you. Look at that. Look how similar. I don't think that's an accident. And I'm convinced that this card needs to be read. Okay, we had a solar eclipse in the middle of the night, and that's interesting because this card says, "Fall into my arms." This is from the Starseed Oracle, it's called. Fall into my arms. And the key words under it are surrender, holding the opposite. And I thought, what an amazing message to go in an eclipse. And then it says extremes of light. And I'm thinking sun and moon, light and dark. And all the things that are going on right now, you could see this video at any time, but right now it's June 21st, 2020, and surrender, holding opposites, extremes of life is very relevant. And so I'm going to end this little talk, I'll do the sketching later, by reading the Fall Into My Arms reading for the day, because it's beautiful. Fall into my arms. The Great Mother ushered you in when you took your first breath, and she'll be there when you draw your last. The image does look like a mother holding a baby. And that's funny because on my Instagram, I posted an illustration 2 days ago of a mother seated holding a baby. So much like this, except she was in red. For the red jasper crystal, which is for nurturing. So that's why they're talking about Great Mother. She knows how challenging life can be, that being human can be lonely and confusing. And for a moment, I just want to say, look how tiny they look. The humans on this card look so tiny. And yet they're in a cave, which is very, to me, very womb-like, very mother-like itself. The polarity, eclipse, and society, the polarity and separation can be excruciating when your soul remembers the oneness of Source. But at the same time, it can be incredibly glorious and sweet. Polarity is a world of senses. There's so much contrast, because there's no contrast without polarity, right? But then in spirit, we are oneness. There's this dance back and forth. So often, we see things as either good or bad. When things go well, we make it mean that we're being rewarded. And when things are bad, then perhaps we've done something wrong. However, we're all here to expand and grow, and it's through the extremes of life that we do exactly that. I have to repeat this one part. When things go well, we make it mean that we're being rewarded, and when things are bad, then perhaps we've done something wrong. That's us putting meaning on things that don't necessarily mean that at all. It's really important sometimes to stop and remind yourself you are giving the meaning to something. Something that you think means something about you does not necessarily mean anything about you. And those are the kinds of thoughts we need to re-examine more often if we're in pain about something. And right now, so many of us think as our livelihoods are being upturned, or our lifestyles with the quarantines and lockdowns and things, what does that make us think about ourselves, doubt about ourselves? What meaning are we giving that? Because just because we give it a certain meaning doesn't mean it intrinsically means that thing. Whatever meaning you give it, it takes on. But it really just is in spirit. And in polarity, it means all kinds of things. Okay, so this is to bring to your challenges, You're being invited to welcome the highs and lows of the human experience, to let them initiate you more fully into life, the agony and the ecstasy, the beauty and the bitterness. I always say that like we came here to touch and feel and experience the full range of life. And sometimes we wish we hadn't, but that's what we came here for, I believe. This life is but a single breath in the unextinguishable existence of your experience as a soul. The Great Mother wants you to hand over your loneliness, worries, hurt, sorrow, fears, burdens, and doubts, to lay them on her altar, to fall fully into her arms, to remember that while these extremes are difficult, they can also be magnificent. I never feel this way during, but I always see this after those, unimaginable hard things you go through. When you look back, you have a very different perspective. Remember that while these extremes are difficult, they can also be magnificent. So much growth happens there. The more wildly the pendulum of your life swings, the more truthfully you can say, I've fully lived. I've truly lived. And then there is an activation where you place the card on the portal of your heart. I'm just going to show you the image one more time so you can do that visually. You're that little baby in the mother's arms. Feel that feeling. And say, I'm ready to embrace the extremes of my life. I lay all that I'm carrying onto the Great Mother's altar and fall completely into her arms. And when you bring yourself to the drawing board, you're often engaging in that relationship. And I hope that served you today. So I'm taking these fabrics, which came out of a huge pile of fabrics, that then a few surrendered to come together. And now I will come to the page, not knowing what I'm going to create, and let life be lived through me. See what comes up. We'll do that in the next video. Wherever you're seeing this, make sure to stay connected if you want to sign up or whatever. If you have questions or comments, I love to hear from you. And in my fashion illustration and design classes, we explore all the arts and facets of fashion design study with a focus on ourselves, our spirit, and what we really want to say. Not about industry distortions, stretching the body out, corporate fashion mega brands, and It's all about making with meaning, discovering yourself through these art forms, and going deep into the craft, the aesthetic, the message, and the journey of fashion. This is so deep, and tell stories about people. People. It's a very spiritual, soulful art form. If they would just let it, if we would just let it be, right? Okay, thanks for joining me. I'm Laura Volpatesta. See you soon. Bye.